So I just got back from New York City and I'm ready to redeploy into liquidity pools. One of the principles that I follow in my portfolio is whenever I know that I can't dedicate time to managing my liquidity pools or even checking up on them, or maybe I just don't have my ledger with me, I don't invest into liquidity pools because I was gone for about a week and I knew that the market was volatile and I knew that the market was moving. Therefore, it was better for me to just sit in hodls because if I went out of range or if I needed to make an adjustment to the pool, I knew that I would not be able to do that because number one, I didn't have my ledger with me. And if I did have my ledger with me, I wouldn't be able to enjoy New York. I was there for a mastermind over at the WAP headquarters. I got to see Times Square, visit Chinatown, see New York from a rooftop, visit the man that moves the markets himself, Mr. Trump, and then also head to the New York Stock Exchange to see how outdated TradFi really is. It was an awesome experience. I'm ready to get back into the groove. So today we're going to be diving into how to actually deploy liquidity pools. I'm going to walk you guys through the process start to finish. And I will say internally with my clients at Builder Wealth, I already went through and did all the analysis for Discover and Simulate on these liquidity pools for actually finding them and finding the ranges. If you guys do want me to make some content around that, make sure to drop a like and subscribe notifications turned on. But also head to the top link in the description because we have a free community called the Liquidity Syndicate. And within that community, we teach you how to get onboarded into DeFi. Occasionally, we'll host a call to kind of answer any questions you may have. We provide you with a bunch of templates and resources, and there's thousands of people in there at this point. We've even had some huge projects like Orca, Polygon, as well as Aerodrome, Velodrome, PancakeSwap, Radium, and projects like that, among those names, come on and speak to our Liquidity Syndicate members so that way they can inform you of greater opportunities. So the pool that I want to deploy into right now is going to be Ethereum Hype, and it's going to be over on PRJX on the Hyper EVM chain. And the reason why I have selected this pool is because I did an analysis across Sol to Hype, ETH to Hype, and BTC to Hype. And not only did ETH to Hype come out with the best APR, it came out with the best risk-adjusted returns, meaning that the divergence loss was the lowest and the APR was the highest. So it was the only logical position for this strategy. Now, that being said, I currently have $27,000 of Hype. And I will say about 6,000 of this is a hodl. The other $21,000 is proceeds from when I actually exited my previous Hype position, which was BTC Hype. Now, all in all, BTC Hype profited for me and it actually avoided a pretty big loss. As you can see over here, I had a $3,100 loss due to decline in the actual asset, but I generated $3,300 in overall earnings, putting me at a $156 profit. Not amazing, but that's also because there were market crashes at the time, like October 10th. This completely whipped the position nearly out of range, but on top of that, wiped away a lot of those profits. So I've been holding all that money in Hype since, which means that all 561 Hype that I exited over here, I was just holding because I knew that I was not going to be able to monitor it while I was in New York. So that was an average price of $38.50. Now Hype is trading at $39.50. Not much change, right? But I retained my exposure and my potential upside by just parking it in that hodl. So now that's going to be converted, some of it into Ethereum, and some of it is going to stay in Hype. So I'm going to go to the Simulate page on this specific one. I'm using the range of 78 to 115. Depending on when you watch this video, this range may or may not be applicable. So do keep that in mind. It's important to formulate your own strategy as opposed to just copying mine because you don't know all the risk, all the ways to make money through this specific strategy because I've done the due diligence on this one. Now, in this case, we are going to allocate 58% Hype and 42% ETH. That's because I want to minimize the amount of Hype that I sell for ETH. And the reason why is because I was previously in that Hype strategy. If we start selling a bunch of the Hype that we accumulated, then ultimately that finalizes the divergence loss, or some of you guys call impermanent loss. Now, another thing that we can do is bring in more capital. So that way we don't have to swap as much Hype, or maybe even any for that matter. And instead, we can ultimately just bring in ETH. Now you can see that I actually have some extra ETH in my wallet, about $2,700. So I'm going to bring in an extra $2,000 to total that to $23,000. So now I'm minimizing the amount of Hype that I have to sell for ETH, but rather just bringing in some ETH. So I'm going to go ahead and execute on this bridge, just simply execute on the transaction and then accept it on my Ledger device because I use a Ledger wallet. And then it's going to go ahead and swap that over to the Hyper EVM network, UETH. Just like that is swapped in 18 seconds. So now when we refresh the portfolio, we're going to have ETH over on the Hyperliquid network ready to actually deploy into this position. You can see it is right over here. So now what I'm going to do is on Metrics Finance, click Match Ticks. It's going to find the actual closest tick that I can provide liquidity on. because within liquidity pools, you can't just have every possible price point. The prices jump from 77.46 to 77.92 to 78.39. So consider these different price points for that matter. And then when we hit create position, this will take us over to the DEX directly on their liquidity page. And now it's up to us to create the position. So we can hit our connect wallet right up here in the top. Now in this instance, I use Rabby. So I'm going to go ahead and select other wallets and then connect with Rabby. And then from there, it's going to ask me to verify my wallet, basically just saying that I'm the owner of this wallet address. I'm going to say that, yes, I am the owner of this wallet address. Sign that little transaction right there, and it will connect me into Project X. Now from there, I'm looking for the UETH to Hype liquidity pool, which is right here. Now, one of the things I like to do is verify. This is V3 0.3% tier. Over here, this is the 0.3% tier. It's UETH to Hype, and ultimately, this is the right one. So now I'm going to type in my range. Now, one thing we have to note is the actual pricing term. It's showing us how many ETH per hype. I'm going to flip that to look at hype per ETH because that's what we were looking at over on metrics. I'll copy my min price and my max price just like that. And then I'll paste it in. And then ultimately, the last thing I'm going to do before typing in my deposit amounts is simply go over to metrics, hit the little refresh icon so that way I can load the latest data. You'll see it'll adjust things accordingly. And then it's going to tell me how much of each asset I need. So I have plenty of hype, right? Because I only need to put 344 in here, but I don't have enough Ethereum. I need 2.78 Ethereum. Now I need to buy a total of 2.07 ETH using my hype. So I'm going to go ahead and trade 201 hype for some UETH right over here using Project X. It's going to prepare the transaction. It's going to ask me to confirm basically, and then I'll be able to sign this transaction right over here and ultimately sign it in my ledger device as well. And then it's going to execute on that trade immediately. It's going to immediately put that ETH in my wallet. And then from there, I'm going to be able to actually deploy into this liquidity pool. Transaction has gone through. So we'll go back over to Project X. I'm going to hit max next to the amount of ETH. It's going to deploy 23 grand. I'm going to preview it, and we're actually going to invest our capital into this liquidity pool just like that. Now, one thing I will say is Project X is estimated 138% APR. However, that APR is typically based on simply recent data. You always want to make sure that you are back testing using a tool like Metrics Finance, using a simulate tool, because this only uses recent fees. Metrics Finance has multiple calculation methods to truly ensure that the APR that you see on Metrics is accurate. And in this instance, it's estimating 116% compared to 132%. And you can see the exact amount of days of volume that's being taken into account. And matter of fact, you can adjust that to look at longer horizons. Like for example, over the past 30 days, this is averaged out to 100% APR. I know all of that before I even decide to pull the trigger on a specific liquidity pool. I need to be comfortable with the historical numbers, because if I just look at the recent numbers, then I could be blindsided. Now, just like that, if we go to portfolio over here, you could see my position right here. On top of that, if we go over to liquidity, you'll be able to see all the other liquidity pools, but you can also see those on metrics using the Discover page by just simply selecting Project X and selecting the Hyperliquid network. So that right there is exactly how you deploy into a liquidity pool start to finish. I know it seems complex. I know it seems hard, but that's just because it was made to be hard. And over time, this user experience gets better and better and better. Those that are on the front lines of liquidity provision are going to be the ones that ultimately build wealth in this next bull run as retail investors start to come on board. I'll see you guys in the next one. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like, subscribe, notifications turned on, and peace out.